I noticed that some of you were having trouble with some of the Venn diagram problems, especially on the challenge review worksheet, and even some of you had some troubles with the Venn diagrams on page 593. So I wanted to go over those with you real quick in a video format so that you could look at. So if you look at, this is from your challenge review worksheet, this is number 3. But if I'm given that the probability of G is 0.60, the probability of H is 0.25, and the probability of G and H, because remember that upside down U means and, is 0.10, how would I put that into my Venn diagram? So if this is G and this is H, one of the most common errors that people will have, is that right here, they would put 0.60. Okay? So if you do that, that's not right. And the reason that's not right is because this is saying probability G is 0.60, meaning the entire circle, everything in this circle right here, this entire circle is G. So this part here can't be 0.60. The whole circle is 0.60. So if you did that, that was a problem that you were having. So let me see if I can, get rid of that. Okay. So when I was talking to you before about doing Venn diagrams, you need to put in the probability of both first. So in this case, the probability of G and H is 0.10. So this part right here is 0.10, because this part right here is in both G and it's in the circle H. So that probability is 0.10. Then that lets me figure out what goes over here in G. Okay. So if the probability of G is 0.60, this 0.10 is part of this circle of G. So what's left over to go here is 0.50. So that should be a decimal point. Okay. 0.50. Because 0.50 and 0.10, that gives me everything in G, and that gives me a total of 0.60. Over here for H, the same thing. So this 0.10, that's part of H. So the probability of H equals 0.25, means that this right here would have to be 0.15, because 0.10 and 0.15 together give me 0.25, which is all of H. So then the next thing that you need to remember is that the probabilities of a Venn diagram should add to 1. So if I take 0.50 plus 0.10 plus 0.15, that gives me 0.75. But everything in this Venn diagram, all the probabilities of everything should add to 1. So right out here, I would have to have 0.25, because 0.75 plus 0.25, that would give me 1. So then number 4, so that's the Venn diagram for number 3 in your challenge review worksheet. So number 4, question number 4, says find the probability, and it has G with the little C at the top. Okay. So that little C at the top means complement. So I need the probability of G with the complement of G. So let me make sure that doesn't really look much like a C. But G complement. So not G. So remember, everything in this whole circle right there is G. Okay, that's all inside the circle of G. So the probability of not G would be everything else. So that's this 0.15 and this 0.25 here that are not in G. So to get that answer for a G complement for number 4, I would take 0.15 plus 0.25, and number 4 should be 0.40. Okay, so that should be number 4. So, oops. So then number 5 asked me for the probability of G complement and H. So G complement and H. So remember, we talked about not G was this 0.15 here and this 0.25 here. Okay? But not only does it have to be in the complement of G, so not inside this circle of G, it also has to be, and it has to be in H. So this 0.15 here is the only part that's in the complement of G and in H. So number 5, the answer would be 0.15. And then for number 6, it says find the probability of G or H. So let me really quickly select all of this. Oh, not. Oh, that's not what we want to do. Nope. Let's see if we can just get this part. There we go. So the one important thing that you want to remember when you're doing these problems is that addition rule, where you do not want to count the and portion more than once. So what I mean by that is, I'll show you in just a second, so we have some space to do number 6. Okay. You don't want to count this area right here when you're doing the probability. So for number 6, it asks you for the probability of G, if I want to put it in probability notation, or H. So when we have the probability of G or H, you need to make sure that you only count these people that are in both sections one time, because they're in G and they're in H. So they're in this circle of G and they're in this circle of H. But you only want to account for them once, because if you add them in G and in H, you will count them twice, okay? Or count this probability twice. So one way to do that is just to add these 3 numbers, 0.50, 0.10, and 0.15. And if you do that, you will get 0.75. Or you can remember that addition rule that we talked about. And so you're going to probably want to go back and remember this addition rule, because you're going to need it to solve lots of different problems. But the probability of G or H equals the probability of G plus probability of H minus the probability that's in both. G and H. That way you only count it one time. So if you literally plugged in those numbers for problem number 6, and the probability of G, you would have 0.60. The probability of H is 0.25, and the probability of G and H is 0.10. So if you take in your calculator and you took 0.60 plus 0.25 and subtracted 0.10, you would also get, that the probability of G or H was equal to 0.75.